Now it's time to play a little bit of who gets the job. We're going to look at the coaching carousel. Let's do 3 schools. Let's do LSU, Florida, and Penn State. And LSU and Florida are related, so we'll do those back to back. And Penn State we feel like they're fishing from a little bit different pond, but there may be some crossover there too. But let's start with LSU. Let's start with LSU, Ari. LSU fires Brian Kelly, depending on who you ask, several weeks ago or last week. But Brian Kelly's gone. They need a new coach. They are heavy into trying to get Lane Kiffin. As of last Friday night, everybody and their mother assumed that Lane Kiffin was going to LSU. Now, I'll point out that the previous Friday, everybody and their mother assumed he was going to Florida. There also still is the possibility he stays at Ole Miss. So let's talk about the job itself and then the Lane Kiffin of it all. And then if Lane Kiffin doesn't pick LSU, what happens? So let's talk about the job right now. Because you were talking earlier in the show about, did we overthink this a little bit?
I think we did. Yeah. LSU was a top 5 job in college football. I know the times have changed. I know it's easier to compete at non-traditional places. But if you are a climber, if you are a person who wants to work at the place, I also think that there's a difference between the ability to build something or the ability to compete with these teams and being that team, right? Just because Ole Miss can compete with LSU now doesn't mean that they are LSU. Do you see the difference I'm making there?
I do.
And like Lane Kiffin had this wonderful documentary about, all the ways he's changed and the lessons that he's learned. And there was these pictures of him leaning against the wall as he left Tennessee and Oakland and the Raiders and all this stuff. And frankly speaking, I don't know if it's possible, or it is possible, but I guess I don't think that it's impossible to change as a human while not changing the fabric of who you are, which is he's a climber. He's been a climber his entire life, hasn't he?
Yeah.
I don't know that. I think that Ole Miss is a wonderful job. I think that Ole Miss can win a national title maybe as soon as this year. I don't know. They are a really good team, and they have proven for 2 years in a row now that they were able to get enough good players to be considered to be in that. And I think that as long as the rules stay the way that they are now, that'll continue to be the case. But Ole Miss's ceiling is LSU's expectation. And I think when that happens, you are going to have financial advantages, you're going to have geographical advantages, and you're going to have administrative and fan support advantages that just don't exist at these other places. So if you're going to put me on the spot right now and say, hey, where do you think Lane Kiffin is going to go? Or why do you think Lane Kiffin would go? It's because, it's the nicest house in the nicest neighborhood. You can buy a house in a nice neighborhood and renovate it and make it awesome, but it's still not going to be the mansion down the street. I think that LSU is the mansion down the street. And I think LSU would speak to Lane Kiffin on that level. So my guess, Brett McMurphy texted a bunch of people yesterday and has been asking around. I'm sure you got the text too of, I know nobody knows what's going to happen, but if you had to make a guess of who LSU or what Lane Kiffin is going to do, then I'm very excited to see the results of what he got when he did, because he's really good at those polls. But I said LSU. My guess was that Lane Kiffin would go to LSU yesterday.
It's really interesting because if you boil it down to its component parts, it seems like that would be the decision. Now, I think that not being able to coach Ole Miss in the playoff would tug at me a little bit. Yeah. Would tug me toward Ole Miss and staying a little bit. But yeah, if you're saying who puts you the closest to winning a national title, 3 of the last 4 LSU coaches have won the national title. That is a fact. Lane Kiffin would know what he wants to do. I think you'd probably see Ed Orgeron returning to LSU in some role if he takes the job. Scott Woodward doesn't work there anymore, so I don't think that would be a problem. I think Lane would know exactly who to have on the staff. He's worked in this environment before. He knows the recruiting landscape down there. He knows who recruits well down there. The question I have, and this is not to say that he shouldn't take the job. Lane's been pretty reliant on the transfer portal at Ole Miss. At LSU, you need to be more reliant on high school recruiting. Do you think he would be? And do you think the reliance on the transfer portal at Ole Miss is because it's harder to recruit at a high school at Ole Miss? Now, I point out that they've gotten good players out of high school at Ole Miss, like Quinshon Judkins, who didn't wind up staying at Ole Miss, was an out of high school signee that they found.
Yeah. Well, the question you have to answer, and maybe he's the only one, it was the strategy at Ole Miss what it was because it was viewed as a necessity, or is that the way he prefers it?
Correct.
Like that's always the chicken egg situation there. It's like, well, if you go to LSU and you have 10 5-star players or 10 top 150 players in your state that are dying to play for you every year, like that's a layup. Like, like who's not taking the layup? Like, is he going to go drive to the basket with a clear ability to lay the ball in and then kick it out, or is he just going to lay it in? So like, to me, I think that he would, like, that's why LSU is one of the top 5 jobs in America. It's not just the stadium size, the fan buy-in, and how much it means to people down there. It's the fact that you already have half your recruiting class finished every year before everyone else is starting, which then frees up more time to go do the other things that you need to do, which is big time out-of-state prospects, transfer portal, and, managing your program. So, and Ohio State has that same advantage. You need to, like, that's and like, Lane Kiffin has done a remarkable job, but when you're talking about the amount of money that it's going to take to get this done, doing it with somebody who has never really illustrated the ability on National Signing Day to stand toe-to-toe with the teams that LSU is expected to beat is kind of scary. Now, I had those same thoughts about Kalen DeBoer, and he's been recruiting his ass off. So Kalen DeBoer never signed a top 200 player in his entire career when he took the Alabama job, and they're doing just fine. So, I think he would do that because it's there. And who wouldn't want good high school players? Who wouldn't? So
exactly. That's why I brought it up, because I really don't think that's an issue. I think that's one that people are going to bring up because of his history recruiting at Ole Miss. But I think it, to your point, that's more out of necessity. I think if he was at LSU or Florida, his high school recruiting would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, and who's the perfect candidate that checks every box? Like, there's going to be an inherent thing that scares you in every single decision you make.
I mean, Lane Kiffin's the candidate that checks every box at LSU, Florida, and obviously to stay at Ole Miss. So he is the goal for all of these schools.
Has he signed a top 10 class in his career, though? He hasn't, right?
USC has.
Was he a top 10 class at USC?
I believe he was. Yeah.
Okay.
I think he had a couple.
That makes me feel better about what we're talking about.
Yeah. So let's just posit, what if he stays at Ole Miss? What if he picks Florida? If you are LSU and suddenly you've got to move down the list of candidates, who would you be looking at?
Well, you didn't answer the question before you go. What did you say to Brett?
I think I said LSU too.
Okay. Because the one thing that we have to acknowledge before we move on, what is it? Pavlov's law? What do you say that?
Pavlov's dog.
Dog. That might not be the right thing, but the right expression, Andy. Bear with me here.
Pavlov's dog is the one where he would ring a bell and feed the dog, and ring a bell and feed the dog, and ring a bell and feed the dog. And then he took the food away, and then when he rang the bell, the dog still salivated. Okay,
that's not at all what I was getting at, as you can imagine, because I'm an idiot. But what
are you talking about? Schrodinger's cat?
I'm going to tell you the thing, and then you tell me which one it is. Okay.
Okay. All right.
The shortest or the most likely scenario is often what you get. What is that?
Occam's razor.
Occam's razor. That's right. Pavlov's dogs. We got there. Look at that.
Yeah.
My dumb ass and your brains, we finally got there.
All right.
I think the Occam's razor here, based on the way that the two jobs are situated, based on where LSU stands in the pantheon of coaching jobs, and Lane Kiffin's behavior all point to that. Like, there's, unless he's like, you keep saying he's a weirdo, he's a weird Pavlov cat. I don't know what you want to call him. It's like was this 4D chess or is this just obvious what's going to happen? Sometimes we overthink the plot. I've lost a lot of games.
Or maybe
overthinking
he's
it.
always wanted to coach Florida and he picks Florida. Like you still have to, with human beings, you still have to consider these things. So in the event that he picks something else, who would your next call be to? Because I know who mine would be.
Is yours Eli Drinkwitz?
I do think there would be a call to Eli Drinkwitz. I think Eli Drinkwitz is on their list. My next call would be Kenny Dillingham.
Yes, and you've been on record saying that quite a bit. I should have said that. That makes sense to me. I think the fact that he's kind of done it 2 years in a row makes me feel better, because a lot of times when coaches catch lightning in a bottle, and he spoke about this at Big 12 Media Day that we were at earlier in the year, of like sometimes teams pop up and they've got really good years, then the next year they stink and they go back into relative obscurity. And that was the number one battle that he was facing. And it's like ASU got dealt a pretty crappy hand this year with some of the injuries.
He's winning games without Sam Levitt right now. He's winning games with Jeff Sims. Like the guy knows what he's doing. And I also, he had such a teardown to deal with when he got there. Like the fact that he got them not just competitive quickly, he got them to be the best in their league very quickly is a big deal. So
do you think what you would do in the call that you would make and the call that LSU will make if they don't get Lane Kiffin are different? What do you think they're going to do?
I do think that's a call. Now, Eli Drinkwitz and Kenny Dillingham have the same agent. So it's probably a call to that agent. Like, which of your guys wants this job more? Which do we like better?
Yeah.
And LSU is going to say which one they like better. And that's who the target will be. And there are going to be other people involved too. But I think Drinkwitz is one that people would definitely want to talk to.
Yeah. Because like we get so fixated on what is going to happen with Lane, but the contingency plans haven't really been discussed all that much. And like, I don't even know like what LSU's contingency plan really is.
Yeah. And I'm sure they've got one, just like I'm sure Florida's got one. They've been talking to people all along. It's not like they only talk to Lane Kiffin. And that's what I want to point out with LSU and Florida, that everybody has been talking to everybody. So there is a contingency in place, but I also think LSU can attract pretty much anybody.
Yeah.
Like there's a reason they got Brian Kelly out of Notre Dame. Now, I don't think they're going to get like Marcus Freeman's not leaving for them. Ryan Day's not leaving. Kirby Smart's not leaving. But I do think they're the one out of this bunch that if there was a surprise, like if they didn't get Lane Kiffin, there was a surprise like, oh, we didn't know he was looking for a job. Like that would be.
I think the one. LSU as a place could make a 8 out of 10 coach feel like one of the best coaches in college football.
Right. That's why Jimmy Sexton and company are working so hard and telling Lane Kiffin that if you're going to leave, LSU probably is the better spot. Because Florida, it's my alma mater. I love it. But Florida has won national titles with Hall of Fame coaches. And Hall of Fame coaches only. And Florida's only had sustained success with Hall of Fame coaches. LSU hasn't necessarily needed Hall of Fame coaches to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the difference.
And I also think that makes their coaching search a lower leverage situation. And I almost feel like they might not be, and it might work out, but it's just like, does LSU actually need to participate in this bidding war? Does LSU need to have Lane Kiffin? Like, I think that like John Summerall would do just fine there.
Oh, I think John Summerall would actually do great at any of these jobs.
Yeah. But it's like, how much would it cost to get
We're not talking about the Auburn job, which is the one we think he's going to take. So
could they pay John Summerall $9 million and he would just walk there?
Yes.
So when you think about the financial investment that goes into getting a coach that's never won a power conference before, what's a better use of your money? What's a better gamble? What's a better bet? Like, I honestly think if I were up to me, I would hire John Summerall for $9 million over Lane Kiffin for 15.
Interesting. I don't think anybody in the LSU fan base would agree with you on that.
No, sure. I mean, because everybody is and this is the thing that everybody's made mistakes with. Texas A&M made this mistake with Jimbo Fisher. You go out and you get the guy that you've heard of. You go out and get the guy that everybody's talking about because it legitimizes you as a program, that you're the one that they chose. But making a splash on your opening day press conference isn't nearly as important as making a functional hire.
The difference between Lane and Jimbo Fisher, though, is Jimbo Fisher had won a national title. Lane's still trying to get there.
Yeah.
So the odds of Lane just packing it up because he got a big God contract, pretty slim.
And my point isn't that Lane is going to pack it up. And I don't know how to have this conversation without it sounding like I'm dismissing him and his accomplishments, because I certainly respect.
This is not a Lane Kiffin conversation. You were having a more I get your point. It's a more broad-based point that the next great one may not be the person you're thinking. Like when Oregon needed to replace Mario Cristobal, they went and hired Georgia's defensive coordinator. I don't know that most Oregon fans before he was hired knew who Dan Lanning was, but now they are so happy they have him.
Yeah, it reminds me of like NFL fans who are watching the NFL draft, and you know how they zoom in on those people who go to the draft and they pick a player that like
they pick an offensive lineman and they boo.
They've never heard of. It's like, and then they're all like, "Oh, what the hell?" And it's like at the number 2 spot in the Cleveland Browns select Myles Garrett, and everyone's like, "Why didn't we get a quarterback?" It's like, what? Well, it worked out. And I think the Browns are the worst possible example because all their draft picks suck, but Myles Garrett.
I mean, Myles Garrett's been awesome, but
I'm saying, like, don't get caught up in the excitement. Like, drafting Myles Garrett was not as exciting as drafting Johnny Manziel, but what draft pick worked out better? Like, you don't have to go sign Johnny Manziel as your coach to make a functional hire. That's my only point. And like Lane Kiffin is the flavor of the month, and he's earned that. And I don't doubt that he's going to be good wherever he goes because he's illustrated that he's been good, very good at Ole Miss. So my only point is that I think that everybody gets fixated on one candidate in every cycle. And how many times has that one candidate been the truth? Who are all the other candidates that, have been in similar situations where 8 teams want him and he's the guy that have actually panned out at their next place?
Urban Meyer, Nick Saban, that's pretty much the list.
Yeah, and I guess Jim Harbaugh, but it took 6 years.
Right. Yeah.
But, if you're looking around at the top 10 coaches in college football, all of them were coordinators for the most part first.
Yeah. I mean, Dabo was a receivers coach. So, yeah.
Mike Elko was one of the few ones that was a head coach, and he was a head coach that you had never heard of unless you were an A&M fan.
Yeah. Now, it's so interesting how the dynamics of this work. But again, with Lane, I don't think it's a Jimbo situation. So I think if you're Florida or LSU and you get Lane, you're not worried about you gave him all this money and he's just going to be like, I'm good. That's not going to happen.
My only
because he still wants to win a national title.
If your number one qualification or your number one motive when making a coaching hire is to make your fans excited because they know who that person is, you're doing it wrong.
I agree. I don't think, look, I say this a lot, and I say this to ADs. The goal is to win games, not to win press conferences.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think you're going to win games with this person, then by all means. Now, the thing with Lane Kiffin, I think you will win press conference and games.
Yeah,
I think
that's why he's $15 million.
Exactly.